There is only 2 weeks left in the regular season, and the pressure is certainly on Nebraska internally. We'll talk about it next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
Okay, hello. It is Tuesday. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone in Omaha is here with me. We're going to review today all that Matt Rhule had to say on Monday at his press conference after the USC game. Nebraska coming off that 28-20 loss Saturday in Los Angeles, getting ready at 5-5 to welcome 5-5 new offensive coordinator Wisconsin program to Memorial Stadium on Saturday. One of these teams is going to get bowl eligible. It is just such an important time, Connor, for this Nebraska football team in the context of this season. Obviously, we understand that Nebraska has an opportunity to end its 7-year bowl drought, but some of the things that were said on Monday by Matt Rhule illustrate what an important time it is also in the larger context of Nebraska football. And yes, that has to do with momentum that can be gained from getting to a bowl game. But for the first time on Monday, Matt Rhule talked about some of the issues that are facing Nebraska down the road. We heard real talk on roster cuts, which if you haven't been paying attention to the House settlement case, some of what he said on Monday could have been a little bit jarring.
Yeah. If you haven't heard about that, it's about to affect.
I think some people haven't.
Yeah, you might be right, or they put it off maybe it's like recruiting to some people. You just put it on the back burner until they get here, and then we'll see what happens. But basically, it's here, and so there was a lot that Rhule went into. Obviously, he's talked about his his love and affection for the walk-on program before, but it's not just that. Nebraska has an excess. I don't even know how many scholarship players you would say that they have at the moment. It's a lot.
It's over 100 as far as players who are either on scholarship or scholarship adjacent.
Right. And so we're talking about getting it down to 105. And as far as as far as guidance from the NCAA is concerned, they're going to have 105 only next year. Nebraska has upwards of 120 on their roster, and they dress all those guys, and there is all that stuff, and there's the portal, and there's recruiting, and all the normal ways that you acquire players. So why don't we just pull up the first clip here from Matt Rhule? We'll dive in on roster limits for Nebraska and what that might do to the program and what it means for them right now, even though the rule's not in effect.
Yeah, the roster limits are a real factor. It's just I can't imagine what's going to happen in the next 6 months. And if you're like a coach who's really cares about people, you're going to have to tell guys at the end of the season, like, hey, there's no spot for you here next year. So the guys can go and find somewhere else to go. And you have some players probably who are like, I'm not touching the ball enough, or I'm unhappy. And they're like, I'm going to go in the portal. And you think about the effect that's about to happen. The portal's already flooded. So we have 150, and we need to go to 105. That's 45 guys. Now I know some seniors, but we'll add some guys. Just think about 20 to 30 guys from every school having to go into the portal, and the effect it's going to have on FCS, and then on Division II, and then on NAIA and Division III. It's going to be, so to your point, when Marquise and Jamari say, hey, we want to come back, that's 2 more people now that can't be here next year. And so it's going to be really, not just unique. I sometimes say unique. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. And then, so what do? Do you not tell kids until next fall, you're not a spot in the 105? The portal, I can't imagine what it's going to look like this year. It's going to be overrun, and it's going to be overrun with lots of really good kids. And so lots of really good kids we have some kids on our team that all they want to do is just go out and just be a Husker and practice and help the team. And, I've talked a lot about the guys who've, they've done all these different things here. There's a lot of guys that are going to walk on senior day that, man, like some of them are going to change the world, So Is Grant Buda walking? Yes. 3.9 student. Made his way into camp because of the work he did this summer. Made the elite list every week. He's going to be a doctor. Wants to be an NFL orthopedic surgeon. In the future, that kid won't be able to be here, or I'll have to tell that kid, "Hey, you can't be here anymore." That's, for a guy that's wired like me, that's absolutely heartbreaking. It is what it is. We deal with it, but yeah, and it's impending. The reason why I sound like this, Mitch, is it's impending. It's not, next fall the roster limit's 105. Troy's asked all of us to be honest with everybody so that they can find a place. But you're gonna have some really good kids that, man, they're not gonna have a place, and it's gonna be really, really, really hard.
What does that mean for
All right, so that's a long clip. I wanted to play it all, and that wasn't even everything. He continued on about how this week is one of the most important weeks in his coaching career because there are players who aren't seniors on this roster who will be playing their last games at Memorial Stadium because of the decisions that have to be made in this offseason. And, there's a sentiment out there. I actually heard this on radio here in Omaha on Tuesday morning, not your station, Connor, that we shouldn't be talking about this right now, that these next 2 games in Nebraska getting to a bowl game are so important that this is not the issue that we should be talking about. And it absolutely is the issue that we should be talking about because it affects the program long term, just like getting to a bowl game does. This is arguably much more important for Nebraska beyond the next 2 weeks than anything that has to do with whether you're going to qualify for the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl next month. Much of them focus in December around this program. Whether Nebraska is playing in a bowl game or not is going to have to do with constructing the roster moving forward. Nebraska is going to look like a changed program. And this was the reality, whether the Huskers had a magical season in 2024 or one that has gone sideways in what we've seen in the last 4 games. So Rhule hasn't really taken the bait, and Troy Dannon has also kind of skirted this issue when he's been asked about it as the weeks have whittled away before these decisions were going to be right in front of the coaches and the administrators. But Rhule kind of opened the door on Monday by announcing that Jamari Butler and Marquise Buford, as he mentioned in that clip, have decided to come back last year. And the way he phrased it was they asked if they could come back next year. Now, these are 2 black shirts. Of course, Nebraska wants those guys back. But in this new world of college football, what that means is that 2 newcomers, 2 recruits, 2 transfers, or more likely 2 players who are on the current roster will not have spots in December, January moving forward because those 2 want to come back. And that's just really difficult for a coach like Matt Rhule.
I'll say this: the numbers over the last couple of years now have they've gotten really, really bloated. And that's just not at a place that's not just at a place like Nebraska that's always carried 100, or most of the time carried 150 or upwards of 100 on their roster. We have 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th year players, around the country right now.
Right.
COVID,
and other stuff.
Partly in effect because of COVID, other stuff, like you said. I mean, the NCAA waiver process is interesting. Rhule told an interesting story yesterday about why they couldn't get a year back for Deshaun Singleton.
Interesting that he went with the Michigan sign stealing there. Yes.
Yeah. He said, hey, played 1 play against Michigan and got crackback blocked the other way and got injured and out for the season. Did they know what was coming? I don't know, he said. But anyway, the point is that the rosters have become really bloated. So if you look at it, if you try to look at it from like a heartless kind of sense, if you have a heart, you feel bad for a lot of these players and the minimized opportunities that they get. But if you're looking at it from a heartless sense, it does sort of flatten the sport in a way that is super unique and different. And so Nebraska is going to be in a position like a lot of other programs are around the country. I mean, think about the programs that are making better use of their 140 players on their roster, there's use there, sort of all the way down. Nebraska has a great, tradition and a walk-on program and all that stuff, but I don't know. I think there's a lot there. I don't think it all has to be bad, to be honest with you, but certainly in the short term, Nebraska's got to make some tough decisions.
That's the thing, is the short term is going to be really, really tough, as you very, very easily could tell from Matt Rhule's voice. I mean, you see if you're watching on YouTube, you saw Matt Rhule's body language at the beginning of that answer. He put his hands up over his head and just kind of wiped his face. Like, I can't even imagine my days in the office. And it's not all about him. He can't even imagine like the reactions from when some of the hard conversations he's going to have with players that they've brought into this program over the last 2 years, in this mode of being a developmental program where they continue to take walk-ons, and you can be in the program for 3 years before you have to, step to the forefront. Even if you are, say, a 3-star recruit, there really isn't room for developmental programs in the world ahead in college football in the way that we've seen them from some of like the old Big Ten West schools in the last 20 years. In the long term, having 105 players is doable. It's something that Nebraska can do, just like Miami can do, or Washington can do. It spans the college football globe. You can get it done. In the short term, it's going to be very painful for Nebraska to have to part ways with 40 or 50 players after this season. And that doesn't even mention like getting your roster in the right place to compete. How many players will Nebraska have to get from the portal after this season just to be able to be in position to win games in 2025? For each one of those, that's another guy on the roster now who has to go.
Now, I would imagine, as Rhule said, he doesn't know yet. Are we going to hard cut straight to 105? I mean, that's sort of hard to believe. So maybe there's a trickling down process over a 4-year period where you start at 120, or you don't have to tell anybody to go right away. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but eventually, yeah. I mean, still there are going to be some tough decisions to be made.
I've heard no guidance about going above the 105. So the closer we get to this, without them saying you can have a taxi squad or you can have injured reserve or you only have to be at 105 in training camp, the closer we get to December when the portal opens without any guidance from the NCAA on that, the more unlikely it becomes that it's anything other than just a hard cut to 105. So we'll see. It's an interesting topic, and it's relevant to to what's going on with the Nebraska program this week, next month, next year, and all of that. So, all right, we'll talk more when we come back about what happened on Monday. Some offensive talk, some defensive talk. That is coming up next. All right, it's time to highlight our Roy Player of the Week. We've been doing this all season. Want to let you know about Roy if you've not heard. It's a new platform that lets fans make contributions directly to their favorite athletes. You need to download Roy for iOS or Android, enter the referral code Locked On. You'll be automatically entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. That's not too bad. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Also, we've got another Roy Player of the Week. And this week, for the second time, first two-time recipient, is Sierra Wright, because of his consistent contributions for Nebraska on the defensive side. In particular, what he did in that last game against USC. If you've enjoyed watching Sierra Wright play, if you like that pick six that he took to the house on Saturday, if you saw the blocked field goal, you can show him some love. Just hop on Roy, display your appreciation for Sierra, our Roy Player of the Week, for his standout performance, as well as your appreciation for what you think he'll continue to bring to this Nebraska program over these next couple of games and into the future. So get off the sidelines. Get into the NIL game today with Roy.
And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Game Time as we set you up here. Game Time basketball season is here, and Game Time makes getting tickets to basketball games so much easier. We're not talking about as many tickets anymore. Game Time's there for you. If you want to see a buzzer beater or a great overtime game, and you can't do that if you're not in the arena. They offer tickets for concerts, shows, not just sports. I know there was a Billie Eilish concert in Omaha just a couple days ago that people were out in tents in front of the CHI Health Center camping out for. You're going to want tickets to these events. So check out the Game Time app. And check out the best feature of the Game Time app. It's called Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of options. How about the big game, the in-state rivalry coming up this Friday between the Blue Jays and the Huskers? Or you want to go to an NBA game in the region somewhere? Game Time allows you to customize your spot in the basketball arena. You can get curated deals, rather, to make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Game Time provided Seat Views provides seat views for you by before you buy. The Super Deal, a unique feature that you need to check out: event cancellation, job loss protection, and as always, it's lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. We'll hear from Tony White and Dana Holgorsen today.
Oh, yeah.
Coordinator day. I really yesterday talking about how what Dana Holgorsen did on Saturday calling plays was like beat writers writing stories on a deadline in Italian.
That was a new one. That was a new analogy. I've not heard a coach go that direction in the past.
But let's focus on the defensive side here. Obviously, you had Sierra Wright, who's our Roy Player of the Week. You had his pick six and his blocked field goal in the game. He played really good. You had some mishaps in the defensive secondary, which is an experienced secondary for Nebraska. Mm-hmm. Talking about guys like Isaac Gifford and Deshaun Singleton and Malcolm Hartzog and Tommy Hill. Each of those guys had a pretty rough play or two in Nebraska's game against USC. Here is Matt Rhule with some pretty honest assessments of the elderly Nebraska secondary.
That's a veteran secondary that didn't play very well in those key moments, and I think they'd be the first to tell you that they're really upset with themselves. The deep touchdown, to number 2, that should never be a touchdown. I mean, those are all simple day one routes. So we had every opportunity, so again, and I always say it because, I'm always very careful what to call out and what not to, but my point to our guys is this. I think after the game, when you guys asked me, do you feel snake bit? No, I expect our cover 2 safety to play cover 2. And I expect our cover 3 corner to stay deep. And if we had done that in that game, those plays would have been eliminated. I mean, that young man was running away from MJ. We expect us to sack him on the first long play down the right side. I'm not so sure he wasn't even just trying to throw the ball away, and he just kind of got caught. So we're not snake bit. We're not unlucky. There's no curse. You got to play the defense called. If it's cover 3, play cover 3. You don't guess and play cover 4. So.
Some have said that receiver number 2 on that long play down the sidelines was out of bounds before he made the catch that led to it actually was a USC touchdown. So that was the first touchdown. We're talking about
it wasn't a touchdown. They scored the next play.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the throw to Deuce Robinson, but I could be mistaken, and that was not a touchdown. Anyway, the point here is that Nebraska's defensive backs were playing the wrong calls in the 10th game of the year. Guys who have 30, 40 games under their belt. How is this happening, Connor?
Well, I'm not making any excuses for people. There's no excuse to be made for any of that stuff, but my guess would be, it's a through line of the stuff that we have talked about throughout the entire season, and really each of Matt Rhule's 22 games in his tenure at Nebraska. I don't know what's going on in the heads of Nebraska football players, but something causes them to lose their minds at various times. We went through all the plays on Saturday that I'm not saying anybody, but a lot of people can make. The frustrating part about it is Nebraska puts themselves in position to make plays a lot, right? Which tells you that their players are capable of doing it and playing at this level and all that stuff. So I don't think it's the fact that they have bad players. It's the fact that in the moment they have just routinely not made plays, and that's not just Malcolm Hartzog letting one go through his hands. That is people being in the wrong coverage, and letting a touchdown go by their face a couple times this year. That's like all of that, I think, is wrapped into one, and it's an unquantifiable thing, and it's something that Matt Rhule's been trying to fix since he's been here, and it's something upstairs. And Rhule has now said, "Hey, look, I'm going to stick with you guys. I want you to do it, right? If he's talking about the older 4th and 5th and 6th year guys who are on that defense, he says, I want you to do it. I want you to be the one to get us to this bowl game. But I don't know. I feel like it's hurt Nebraska in some areas. You know, they could have been playing some younger defensive backs who give them a shot and try and let them get the job done, but they're not. And so they're going to roll with these guys. So we're going to see how it works for them.
You are absolutely right. That was a 28-yard throw to Deuce Robinson that he's referencing there to the 6-yard line. And then SC scored on the next play when Tommy Hill was out of position.
He was also talking about the one to it was like a 40+ yard play that Deuce Robinson got totally wide open. Nobody was near him. He scored a touchdown.
Yeah. There were a number of those plays, of those kind of plays where, you just have to ask yourself the question, like, what's going on during the week with some of them? Is there confusion? Are there communication issues that are existing between the secondary and connecting with the rest of the defense? Because this is just not the kind of play that you think that you would see out of that group, which has depth, experience, and seemingly the kind of coaching you would need with John Butler in his first year coming from the Buffalo Bills. Like, it should have all come together for the secondary this year, and that game was the most clear indication that it hasn't. I'll just throw out this theory. Go ahead.
How is it that, and I don't want to use this as a platform to please don't take this the wrong way about Sierra Wright, but how is it that Sierra Wright comes in in July, is immediately in the rotation, and now he's at the point in the year where he's exactly, he's the best guy back there, and you could trust him, over guys who have been in the program for several years. I mean, there's something that guy just got here 3 months ago. Well, I don't know what that is.
Nebraska's had a lot of change at that personnel wise and with coaching, and we may have glossed over some of the impact of having a coaching change at that position in July. That's when Butler got here, was late July when he showed up in Lincoln, and he'd never worked with Tony White. So this is part of an after the season post-mortem on Nebraska football in 2024. Have we been ignoring the fact that they've got the potential to have real issues in the secondary because of what this forced marriage that Nebraska entered into late in the offseason with John Butler and Tony White? It looked like it on Saturday, more so than I've seen at any point this year. And I'll just say this with this theory that I have about the pressure that the defense is playing under. And this is in no way meant to be an excuse for poor play on the defensive side. But every time these defensive guys go out there, especially Deshaun Singleton, Isaac Gifford, Tommy Hill, Malcolm Hartzog, Marquise Buford, the guys who've been in this program for a while. Sierra Wright doesn't necessarily have this knowledge, this pressure, but every game that Nebraska's won under Matt Rhule, its defense has given up no fewer than 14 points. In fact, all 5 of Nebraska's wins this year, the defense has given up 10 points or fewer. I mentioned that statistic to somebody in the college football media world who doesn't normally cover Nebraska, but will be around the Huskers this week. And this person was floored by that statistic. I'm going to have to go, I don't believe you. I'm going to go have to check those numbers. It's accurate. And what it says is, unless the defense plays lights out, Nebraska loses. And even on a day like Saturday, when the defense produces 10 points, 7 on its own, and another 3 setting up a field goal, it still loses. So there's a lot of pressure on the defense, and I think you're seeing it play out in some ways on the field.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that too. All right, we'll be back. Don't forget to email us lockedonneb@gmail.com. Mailbag show on Thursday. I'm sure there will be no shortage of questions this week. Appreciate you guys subscribing to the podcast. We'll be back with our final segment after this. All right. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out It was really that easy. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk to text on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number and existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. A $45 upfront payment is required, equivalent to of course $15 a month. You guys can do math. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
All right, we are back on this Tuesday at the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer is here with me. Final segment, wrapping up Matt Rhule's comments from Monday. We'll hear more from Rhule later this week on Thursday. Also have a couple clips I want to share later this week from the head coach about the seniors on this team. He was emotional and had some heartfelt comments about the guys that he's coached the past couple of years. We'll get to that. The Wednesday show tomorrow will include highlights and analysis of what we hear from Dana Holgorsen in his first meeting with the Nebraska media today on Tuesday. That should be interesting. Spent some time in the past around Holgorsen at Big 12 Media Days a few years ago. He's a fun guy to listen to. Definitely going to present a contrast to Matt Rhule when you hear the head coach for Nebraska in that setting that we heard on Monday. At a press conference. Rhule was asked on Monday about Wisconsin's winning streak in this series against the Huskers, who have not beaten the Badgers since 2012. Last year, of course, it was a pair of 5-5 teams. You remember Nebraska got out big early. Wisconsin battled back. Badgers forced OT. Actually, Nebraska forced OT. In OT, Huskers won the coin toss. Wisconsin scored. Without even remembering the sequence of the way the game ended, you probably know how it ended. It ended with an interception thrown by Chubba Purdy. So let's listen to what Matt Rhule had to say Monday about Wisconsin and this matchup Saturday at Memorial Stadium.
I want to be in the offseason, Sam, talking to Jamari Marquise now, let's say, who's coming back about, hey, we got to learn how to break through. Like, we're in the same spot as last year. You've got to break through so that there's something new next year that you're going for. And so that's what the end of the year is about to me. It's not about optics. It's not about hope. It's about action. It's about doing things. And so we had every right to win the game last week. We didn't get it done. So it'll be another close game. It's 3 straight games. Ohio State, I think it's Ohio State, UCLA, that the game comes down to the last drive, right? And we have the ball that, we're going to have to go down at some point and win the game. And, Wisconsin just played a great game against Oregon. They played a great game against Penn State. They're talented. It'll be probably come down to the last drive. And, I want our seniors to win one of those. And so I'll do everything I can, and I expect our staff and players to.
Yeah, he's right. It's going to be close. And there is, Nebraska has the opponent on the other side this week who's probably wondering about itself mentally as well after firing their offensive coordinator. They're coming off of a game in which the other team across from them was wondering about themselves mentally from USC, or at least I guess externally. I don't want to put them on themselves, but we were looking at them and saying, boy, I'm not sure where their season's at right now. I'm not sure what they're feeling. And to be fair, I don't think USC really answered the bell on that one. They kind of allowed Nebraska to, hey, take it if you'd like it. And Nebraska didn't take it. And I would imagine that you're going to see a little bit of the same. There's going to be some slop. There's going to be some wondering who wants to win this game on Saturday. And ultimately, Nebraska is still just 1 or 2 plays away from getting over that massive hill they've been trying to climb. But Mitch, I don't know. Until they do it, I can't tell you that they're going to do it. I hope it's a hope, but I don't know that they will.
I don't get a great sense that Wisconsin is hey look, if Badgers are 5-5, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that Wisconsin's not feeling great about itself. Like, who cares? They lost close to Penn State and Oregon. Nebraska lost close to Ohio State. Look look what that's doing a month later. It was nice in the 20 minutes after the game to feel good. Wisconsin coach Luke Fickell on Monday was asked who will be calling plays for the Badgers in this game after his firing of Phil Longo on Sunday, the OC, with the air raid ties that went down in flames over 23 games. Fickell got kind of feisty, didn't want to say who the offensive coordinator would be, said, "Why do you guys even need to know? It's just somebody else for you to pick on." Yeah. So they're feeling a little pressure there in Madison.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's two second-year coaches that need to end the season on high notes badly. I mean, and it's a couple programs that have experienced a lot of success. Obviously, Wisconsin more recently than Nebraska, so there's an expectation there, and so you have these fan bases too that are sort of waning and wondering, okay, is this going to happen? Do I like this guy? You're trying to like parse through all the feelings about the program all at the same time. I think about what a loss would do to either of these sides, and I don't know. You might, on both sides, you kind of abandon all hope if you lose on Saturday.
If you're not already at that point.
Yeah, it'd be a really tough one to swallow. If you win, you get to a bowl and you say, all right, kind of what's next. So that's at least a little bit more of a rosy outlook.
Bring on Detroit. I want to ask this as we close the show and we hear Matt Rhule talk in that clip about how he expects this game again to go down to the wire and be something that's decided on the last drive, as we've seen with the last 3 Nebraska games. So I realize that's his way of complimenting the Big Ten and talking about Nebraska's opponents in a positive light and hammering home the message to his players that they need to play for 4 quarters. But last year, Nebraska led Wisconsin 14-0, 9 minutes into the game. It did not need to go to overtime. Nebraska scored just 3 points in the remainder of that game, ran out of time at the end, had to kick a field goal after a first down play when it took over with 3.5 minutes to go and the field to drive with Chubba Purdy at the controls. So my point is, like, if you continue to tell your players who don't win close games that they're going to play in close games every week, do they just like do the things that make it necessary for the game to be close at the end? Like, are you working against the need to have a killer instinct by just hammering home the point that it's going to be a close game every week?
Yeah, maybe. I've thought about that before. We talked about it. I mean, I guess this conversation dates way back to the second half of the Colorado game, doesn't it? Nebraska didn't quite finish that game. And it kind of left a sour taste in your mouth. And then obviously there was Illinois, and it just kind of just popped up at various points throughout the season. I don't think that's probably, like, if that's your takeaway from it, it's probably not taken in the right way. But like you said,
he doesn't mean like, oh, we need to let this team back into the game.
Right.
I wonder about the players' mindsets. Just knowing that your coach expects you to be in close games at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And it puts all of the, I mean, we talked about all the mounting pressure. It puts all of that on one drive, how many times has Nebraska, there's a chart that flies out there every time Nebraska doesn't come through on a game-winning touchdown drive or a game-tying touchdown drive with an opportunity to, and it's like 0 for the last million. It's absurd.
It's just one of those mathematical impossibilities that's all too real in Nebraska football.
Yep, no doubt about it. All right, that is it for us today. Plenty more talk coming up this week as we get to Wisconsin. We'll hear from the coordinators, Dana Holgorsen and Tony White today. All right. Appreciate you guys tuning in today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. A reminder and a thank you first for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Greg puts the Big Ten first. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.